but that worried her more than anything. Silence could be just as alarming as noise when it came to children. Her cell phone sat on the counter, Linda's number programmed into it months ago. "You ever need to reach me about Emma," Linda had said with a nervous laugh when she first added the contact. At the time, Mrs. Hilton thought it was sweet, a new mother's overcaution. But now her fingers hovered hesitantly over the name. Another crash echoed from next door, followed by a child's muffled voice. Then James roared in response. Mrs. Hilton pressed dial without another moment's hesitation. In the nursery, Owen sat huddled in the corner farthest from the door, cradling Emma as she dozed after finishing her bottle. The iPad propped against the wall showed James storming around downstairs, alternating between shouting into his phone and growling under his breath. The baby monitor app continued recording everything: the shouts, the crashes, the escalating tension. "Hello?" Mrs. Hilton's voice drifted up through the open window. "Linda, I'm sorry to bother you at work, but..." Owen's heart leapt. He could barely make out the conversation. No, I'm sure it's nothing," Mrs. Hilton continued. "It's just, there are some concerning noises. And Owen came home early. Yes, I saw him go in." A tremendous crash from downstairs made both Owen and Emma jump. His sister began to whimper, and he gently bounced her the way their mom did. "Did you hear that?" Mrs. Hilton's voice sharpened. "Linda, I think you should come home. Something's not right." James's bellow cut through the air like thunder, rattling the windows. "Who are you talking to?" Through the iPad screen, Owen watched in horror as his stepfather stormed toward the front door. "Have you checked your baby monitor today?" Mrs. Hilton's voice faded slightly as she stepped away from the window. "Linda, I really think..." The sound of the front door being thrown open drowned out the rest of her sentence. Emma began to cry in earnest, her tiny body trembling against Owen's chest. Shh, Owen whispered, rocking her gently. Mom's coming. Through the window, he saw Mrs. Hilton hurrying back inside her house. On the iPad, James paced the hallway like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair and muttering to himself. Ruining everything. Nosy neighbors. Heavy footsteps started up the stairs again. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, casting long shadows across the nursery floor. How long until his mom got home? How long could the barricade hold? James appeared on the iPad screen again, his face twisted with rage. He grabbed a small side table from the hallway and lifted it over his head. Owen flinched as the first impact of the table against the door shook the entire room. "Open this door right now!" James bellowed. Emma screamed louder, clutching at Owen's shirt. He closed his eyes, pressing his face against her soft hair. "Please, hurry, Mom," he whispered. "Please hurry." At the hospital, Linda Matthews stood frozen in the break room, her phone pressed tightly to her ear. Mrs. Hilton's words echoed in her mind. Something's not right. She opened the baby monitor app on her phone, which she'd forgotten to check during her shift. With trembling fingers, she pressed play on the most recent recording. The sounds that filled her earbuds made her blood run cold. Back in the nursery, Owen had wedged himself and Emma into the narrow space between the crib and the wall. The barricade still held, but each crash sent splinters flying from the doorframe. Through the iPad, he could see James stepping back, breathing heavily, examining his progress. Sweat darkened his shirt collar as he slammed the furniture against the door again and again. Your mother, crash, is going to hear, crash. About what a disrespectful, crash. Little brat you're being. Emma had cried herself into hiccups, her tiny body shuddering against Owen's chest. They'd run out of formula an hour ago, and the diaper supply was dangerously low. Worse, the room had grown colder as the afternoon wore on. James must have turned the heat down even further. "I know you're scared," Owen whispered to his sister, wrapping her blanket tighter around her frail form. "But Mom's coming. Mrs. Hilton called her. We just have to wait." The splintering sound from the door grew louder. On the iPad screen, Owen could see James step back, panting, his face contorted with effort. "You think this door can keep me out?" James laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. "You think you can hide in there forever?" What about when your mother gets home? What are you going to tell her about why you locked yourself away? About why you're turning her against me?" Owen stayed silent, his mind racing. The baby monitor was still recording every crash, every threat, every moment of James's fury. The rain hammered down in relentless sheets, turning the quiet suburban streets of Arlington, Massachusetts, into a maze of shimmering rivers. 7-year-old Owen Matthews clutched his Pokemon umbrella like a shield as he trudged home from Pierce Elementary, 4 soggy blocks away. His sneakers were already soaked, despite his best efforts to dodge the deepening puddles. The unexpected early dismissal, courtesy of a transformer explosion, had thrown everyone's day into chaos. But for Owen, it wasn't just the disruption that made his stomach churn. Something darker hovered at the edges of his thoughts. Through the gray curtain of rain, his house came into view. A modest 2-story colonial with white siding and navy shutters. It should have been comforting, familiar. But there, glinting under the dim light of the driveway, sat James's silver Audi. And that was wrong. Very wrong. At 1:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, James should have been holed up in his home office. The converted sunroom where he claimed to work tirelessly. That office had been Linda's idea when they married 6 months ago, part of her dream of blending their lives seamlessly. Owen remembered the wedding vividly. His mother, glowing in a simple cream dress, holding baby Emma, who'd slept peacefully through the ceremony. James had looked every bit the polished groom, kneeling down to Owen afterward, green eyes sparkling. "We're going to be a real family now, buddy," he'd promised. "I'll take care of all of you." The memory twisted in Owen's chest as he climbed the front steps. Things had shifted so gradually that he couldn't pinpoint exactly when James's smile started feeling like a mask, or when his voice took on an edge sharp enough to make Owen flinch, or when the sound of breaking glass during arguments became more expected than silence. As Owen reached for his house key, he heard it. Emma's cry. Not her hungry cry or her tired cry, but the one that sent shivers down his spine. Her scared cry. Muffled, but unmistakable, drifting down from her nursery upstairs. He pushed open the door, wincing as it creaked. The air inside felt heavy, sour, not the usual lavender scent his mom loved or the aroma of whatever elaborate meal James liked to brag about cooking. No, this smell was different. Familiar even. It reminded Owen of nights long ago, before the accident, when his real dad would stumble home smelling like regret. "Just leave it." James's voice cut through the house, sharp and slurred. "I said I'll handle it. No, you listen." Another crash, followed by muttered curses. Emma's cries grew louder, more desperate. Owen froze in the entryway, water dripping from his umbrella onto the hardwood floor. He knew he should announce himself, call out like he always did. But some instinct older than words told him to stay silent, to listen. 3 weeks isn't that long," James barked into the phone, pacing in the living room. Owen caught glimpses of him through the archway, his stepfather gesturing wildly, a glass in one hand, empty bottles scattered across the coffee table. Better prospects than that joke of a firm ever offered me. "Don't you dare talk to me about responsibilities. I'm handling my responsibilities just fine." Another crash. Owen flinched but stayed rooted to the spot. Through the window, he could see James's reflection clearly now. Disheveled tie, untucked shirt, hair sticking up as if he'd been running his hands through it over and over. His bloodshot eyes darted around the room like trapped animals. Emma's crying hitched into that gulping sob she made when she'd cried too long. Owen's fists clenched. This wasn't right. James was supposed to be taking care of her. That was the whole reason Mom went back to nursing school, to trust James to watch Emma while she worked. Except lately, Owen had noticed things. Diapers left unchanged too long. Bottles forgotten in the crib. The frantic way James cleaned up everything just before Mom got home. "Screw Daniels and his whole department," James shouted into the phone. "They can take their client portfolio and shove it." The thud of Owen's backpack slipping off his shoulder interrupted him. Silence fell like a guillotine. "I'll call you back," James said flatly, lowering the phone. Footsteps approached the archway. Owen swallowed hard, his throat dry as sandpaper. "Owen? That you, buddy?" Yes, Owen managed, his voice barely above a whisper. We had early dismissal. Power's out at school. James appeared in the doorway, swaying slightly. His usually neat appearance was gone, tie loose, shirt untucked, hair wild. The tight smile Owen dreaded stretched across his face. Early dismissal, huh? James took another sip from his glass. Didn't they call to let me know? They tried calling everyone's emergency contacts, Owen replied carefully. Miss Rivera said some calls weren't going through because of the storm. The storm. James repeated the word slowly, his smile widening, but his eyes cold. Right. Well, isn't this perfect timing? Just perfect. You know what your mom and I always say about perfect timing, right, Owen? Owen didn't answer. There was no such saying, but he'd learned the hard way that correcting James only made things worse. Upstairs, Emma's cries reached a fever pitch. James didn't even glance toward the sound. You know, buddy, James began, stepping closer. Your mom works so hard, doesn't she? We both do. Sacrifices, right? For this family. Owen's heart pounded. Something primal told him to move, to run. But he stood frozen, clutching his umbrella like a lifeline. And then, without warning, James turned toward the stairs. Guess I'd better go check on the little princess, huh? No! The word burst out of Owen before he could stop it. James paused, eyebrows raised. What was that? She's scared, Owen blurted, his voice trembling. She needs Mom. She won't stop crying unless Mom comes. For a moment, James just stared at him, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a low, bitter sound that made Owen's skin crawl. Well, Mommy's not here, is she? James said, taking another sip from his glass. So maybe you should grow up and stop being such a baby. Something snapped inside Owen. Without thinking, he bolted past James, racing up the stairs 2 at a time. He reached Emma's nursery and slammed the door shut behind him, twisting the lock just as James's heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Open the door, Owen, James yelled, pounding on the wood. Don't make me break it down. But Owen didn't move. He knelt beside Emma's crib, scooping her into his arms. She was warm and shaking, her tiny face streaked with tears. He rocked her gently, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. I've got you, he murmured. I won't let him hurt you. The pounding continued, but Owen held firm. He wouldn't come out, not until Mom got home. The rain hammered against the windows, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding in Owen's chest. He clutched his dripping umbrella like it was some kind of shield, water pooling around his feet as James took another step closer. The air felt heavy, charged with tension, and upstairs, Emma's cries echoed through the house, a desperate, heart-wrenching sound that made Owen's stomach twist. You and I need to have a little talk, James said, his voice low but sharp, like the edge of a blade. About being a team player, about keeping family business in the family. His words hung there, ominous, as he reached for Owen's umbrella. Owen flinched, gripping the handle tighter. I'll clean it up, he stammered, barely audible over the storm outside and the chaos inside. I promise, but I should check on Emma first. James's hand shot out, grabbing the umbrella with enough force to send droplets of amber liquid from his glass splattering onto the hardwood floor. His face darkened instantly. Look what you made me do, he growled, yanking the umbrella away. The motion spun Owen slightly, forcing him to catch himself against the wall. Always making messes, aren't you? James sneered, tossing the umbrella aside. Always poking your nose where it doesn't belong. But Owen wasn't listening anymore. Upstairs, Emma's cries had taken on a new urgency, a raw, pleading wail that sent chills down his spine. Something shifted inside him then, an unfamiliar heat rising in his chest. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something older, stronger, protective. She needs her diaper changed, Owen said suddenly, surprising even himself with how steady his voice sounded. And she's probably hungry. I'm going upstairs. He turned toward the staircase, but James's hand clamped down hard on his shoulder, spinning him back around. We're not done talking, Owen. Family business, remember? What you might have heard on the phone. You're hurting me. Owen interrupted quietly, meeting James's gaze for the first time. For a moment, their eyes locked, and then James released him, running a shaky hand through his disheveled hair. I wouldn't, James faltered, knocking back the rest of his drink. The glass clinked loudly against his teeth as he set it down. Listen, buddy, things are complicated right now. Adult things, work things. Your mom doesn't need to worry about it, okay? Understand? I'm handling it. But Owen didn't believe him. Not after finding those crumpled bills in James's desk drawer last week. Not after seeing the credit card statement with big red letters warning of overdue payments. Not after noticing how cold the house had been lately. So cold that Emma needed extra blankets at night. I'm going to check on Emma, Owen repeated firmly, edging toward the stairs. James's expression twisted into something ugly. With a roar, he hurled his empty glass against the wall. The crash made Owen jump, but Emma's cries drowned out everything else. The shattering glass, James's shouting, even the blood rushing in Owen's ears. You're just like them, aren't you?